Unlock more growth with Awin. Tackle acquisition, conversions, and retention by tapping into a network of over 1 million affiliate partners. With everything from partner management to reporting and payments in one easy dashboard, Awin helps brands drive real, scalable results. Visit awin.com/emarketer to learn more. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Banking and Payments Show, a behind the numbers podcast from eMarketer. Today is August 12th, 2025. I'm Rob Rubin, Head of Business Development at eMarketer and your host. Today, we're going to talk about the promise and challenges financial media networks face in the burgeoning commerce media network landscape. Joining me today are Principal Commerce Media Analyst Sarah Marzano and Max Willens, a Senior Analyst on our Advertising and Media team. Hey there, Sarah and Max. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having us, Rob.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you guys. I pointed out earlier, it's our 59th Banking and Payment Show, and it's the first time either of you have been on. So I'm super excited.
And I'm trying not to take it personally.
Right. Well, we're hitting on a topic for you, right? I don't think you would have liked a lot.
My way into this space.
I don't think you would have liked a lot, like some of the payments topics I think are interesting. You might not have
Fair.
loved them, but I wanted to let the audience get to know you a little bit more and have some fun with a little icebreaker, true, false. So you can each give me your answer, but true or false? Fintechs now control nearly half of all U.S. personal loan debt.
I think that's
True or
true.
false?
False. Ugh. I
Yeah,
thought this would
really.
be an icebreaker about our
yeah, like,
personality.
I was
our
expecting like a
knowledge.
boxers or briefs sort of thing.
We're just going to erode our own credibility as guests
Seriously.
on this podcast right out of the gate.
So it's true. Fintechs hold
Believe.
49% of all U.S. personal loan debt compared to just 22% for banks. True or false? About 1 in 4 consumers say their bank can anticipate their
1 in 4.
needs.
True.
I guess I'll also say true.
That is right. Only 22% of consumers say their bank can anticipate their needs.
Yeah.
We'll get more of that later.
Mm-hmm.
True or false? Trust in Apple for financial services has declined over the
I think
past
that's true.
year.
I'm just going to go with false to keep it interesting.
You are correct, Sarah. It is false. Trust in Apple actually increased from 13.9% to 19.8%.
Is that surprising then that because the bank that underwrites their banking business is changing, isn't it?
Goldman?
Yeah,
I think it
that seems
is.
funny.
But it's the question about trusting Apple. You know, I don't think a lot of companies know who the underwriter is or think about it that
Yeah.
way. That was fun.
But we're tied.
You guys were, yeah, I guess.
We need a winner.
So competitive. Let's get right to our first segment, Story by Numbers. In Story by Numbers, I pick a few numbers to help us frame the topic. And today, my first number is 1.78 billion. And this is our forecast for 2027 ad revenue to financial media networks. That's a lot. To put that in perspective, this year we forecast financial media network ad revenue at 0.64 billion. So not even a billion. So the growth is like 3x over the next 2 years. And I think we should start there. Sarah, who are the players in the game that are getting all this?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating question to answer. This is a really nascent space, so there aren't many players that make up this cohort of FMNs, and they represent a really diverse array of types of financial companies. So you have everyone from traditional financial institutions like Chase, who have their Chase Media Network, to payment transaction providers like PayPal, as well as the buy now, pay laters like Klarna, who have set up commerce media businesses.
Max, who would want to advertise on these platforms?
Well, at the moment, the answer is affiliate marketers in a lot of cases. I think a little bit about, so a couple of years ago, Chase bought a company called Fig that was sort of designed to facilitate card-linked offers, and which is a small but important slice of the affiliate marketing ecosystem. And so a lot of the sort of ads that you see when you pop up in your Chase app, for example, are sort of there because of an old relationship between Fig and an advertiser. And it's a it's a very diverse set of advertisers, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's
know, you can find restaurants, you can find Apple, you can find luggage companies,
find
you can find
groceries.
apparel. There you go. And then to speak to Sarah's point, what I think what is so interesting about this space is that, you know, you also have a completely different sort of base of advertisers for PayPal ads, for example, right? I mean, you have um, people that want to tap into their data. You also, too, I think there's over the near to medium term an opportunity for PayPal's, I guess, merchants as an endemic category to do some advertising there. So one of the things that I think is going to help PayPal grow so quickly is that they spent long kind of quixotic period trying to deepen their services relationship with the merchants that they served. And those kind of inroads, I think, might help turn those folks into advertisers as well. So the answer at the moment is kind of a little bit of everybody, but everybody is spending just a little, without being too cute about it.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. And I think you teed up a good point, which is this important sort of distinction. It can be very tempting to look at every commerce media player as someone who's in direct competition with retail media.
Hmm.
But the advertisers on financial media networks are going to look different because it's not just individual brands who these institutions are courting, right? It could be the retailers themselves. And I know we'll get into this, but for the retailers, there is the access to the data around that cross merchant shopping that's really appealing. So I always use the example like Macy's and Nordstrom. If you're Nordstrom and you want to make sure you're getting in front of someone who's a regular Macy's shopper but doesn't shop with you
Yeah.
very
Additive
often,
conquesting.
that's an exciting opportunity that
Yes.
financial media networks can provide.
It brings me to the point in our little true false is that only 22% of consumers thinks banks are good at anticipating their needs. So why will banks be good at that? Like the affiliate thing, it's sort of like I sort of went through it. Feels a little bit like they're just throwing spaghetti against the wall. It's like, yeah, we'll give 10% off anybody who clicks through. And that's a always on campaign. That's not the same thing as running omni-channel retail
Yeah,
media campaign.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that these players face. I think the ability to create highly personalized offers is not the same as being good at it now.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest challenges here, especially because if you think about the way consumers are interacting with these companies, it's not necessarily with a high purchase intent, right? If you think about why you're opening up your credit card app, it's probably not with shopping in mind. And the reason I bring that up is because it increases the necessity of creating offers that feel so personalized that it drives someone to take an action that they weren't necessarily planning on taking.
yeah, I loved that question and the true false thing only because I prefer not to think that my bank is trying to anticipate my needs. I just want them to, you know, allow me to pile up points so that I can go on a vacation every once in a while. But I think Sarah summarized the challenge that's in front of them.
We'll get back to that too. Piling up points. That's a point that I want to get back to in terms of consumer behavior when we get to our next segment. But I wanted to throw a second number out, which is 92.24 billion, giant number. And it's our forecast for commerce media in the same year that we've been talking about, 2027. So if you look at the 1.78 billion, it's less than 2% of the total. So it gets to what we've been talking about. If that's the case, why are financial media networks so important to understand?
Well, I think Sarah did a good job of laying it out, but I'll steal some of her points and just sort of say that they from a data standpoint, in terms of the depth and variety of data that they sit on, the picture that they can paint of their users is pretty unparalleled, right? I mean, even Amazon, which sells one of almost everything, probably multiple kinds of everything, can't provide full visibility into, you know, the things the person does to entertain themselves, where they go when they travel, you know, what kinds of coffee they get in the morning. And a financial institution can absolutely provide that level of granularity and information. And so as advertisers continue to look to get smarter about who they target, how they find incremental customers, understanding all that stuff, that makes financial media networks a kind of a uniquely attractive partner. And they also happen too to be a partner that isn't necessarily tied into a relationship that you might have as part of a joint business plan if you're a CPG company. It allows you to sort of play a wider field potentially. And that makes them, I think, potentially quite attractive. But I'm sure Sarah's got more on that as well.
I mean, I think one of the things I was going to say is that you're absolutely right that when you put those two numbers against one another, it can be really easy to be tempted to say, like, okay, this is a tiny drop in the bucket. It's almost inconsequential. But I think it's important to point out that Amazon drives the overwhelming majority of that $92 billion. They have 40% e-commerce share in retail in the United States. And because that's where most of retail media ad spending is concentrated today, Amazon sort of tilts the scales in a way that almost can take away our understanding of the landscape overall. Max, in your latest commerce media report, you did a really great sort of visualization where you took the Amazon sort of out of the picture and maybe even Walmart and looked at the rest of the retail media.
16% is the rest.
Yes.
Yep. Amazon is 77%. Walmart is like 7%, and then everybody else is the difference.
Yep. But Max, you sort of took the dollar amount and backed out the two retail media giants and did a really great job showcasing that the rest of retail media compared to the non-retail verticals within commerce media are actually quite comparable. And I think what's really interesting, if you take into context financial media specifically, is this is not a super crowded playing field. And that's really different than the rest of retail media, where you've got this long tail of more than 50 networks here in the United States vying for that ad spend. So I think if you put some of those things into context, paired with the growth rate as financial media builds on a relatively small base, and the things they can do that retailers can't, which we've touched on, those are the reasons that we are endeavoring to really keep track of what's going on in the space and what the opportunity is.
But it's not for all financial institutions. In other words, this is going to probably be like you see Chase and PayPal. I can see Amex. I can see MasterCard, Visa, B of A.
Yep.
Wells. They might have a trust issue, but Wells. I can see the big ones. Maybe even Citi.
Yeah, there's plenty of players kind of waiting in the wings, and
but
maybe
like I don't think like the regional banks, Huntington Bank. I don't know about that, right? I don't think the little banks are going to have enough scale.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I mean, especially when you're talking about, leading with scale of data, all of a sudden, if you're, like a tiny little regional credit union, this starts looking like a fool's errand pretty quick if you're thinking about whether or not to get into it. And that's one way that this is different from the way things might look if you're, say, a mid-sized, specialty retailer where you might over time be tempted to sort of join some sort of larger network and cede control of it. But that's why you're seeing so much more adoption within retail media relative to financial media.
I wonder if the smaller institutions might join together to create like a network, like credit union network, media network.
I think that's possible. I think that it's going to hinge on the data portability and the way that they can safely do this, considering they're dealing with data that's highly regulated and pretty sensitive in nature.
Yeah, I was going to ask this question, given that they have all this relevant information, why don't they have a bigger share? And I was going to sort of posit that it's sort of the challenges of regulatory challenges of, disclosing sort of certain information, the creepiness factor of being that on target. Especially in certain categories, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a big part of it. And I think that gets us back to what's so interesting about the fact that the players in this space are really diverse, because someone like PayPal has data that's a bit less sensitive than a traditional financial institution. And that may be why we've seen PayPal launch its offsite efforts relatively quickly compared to the launch of their network. But backing up a second, I think one of the biggest limitations for these players is, again, that lack of high purchase intent that their users are going to have. And that's what's really propelled retail media to success, is being able to show an ad to a consumer who's in a shopping mindset in an environment where they're planning on completing that transaction.
Right.
And financial institutions just don't have that. I think one exception would be the buy now, pay laters, which have sort of built their apps around a shopping sort of interface. And I think we're seeing other players endeavor to fortify their owned and operated properties with more commerce-oriented experiences. But that's an uphill battle when it comes to thinking through any trade-offs to user experience and really consumer habits, which I think can be quite deeply ingrained.
I think that we're going to start to get into our final segment. In our final segment, for argument's sake, we're going to argue nicely about whether financial media networks will remain a sliver of commerce media advertising overall, or is the growth trajectory really post 2027 going to continue to outpace other categories? And I think both of you, you can clarify for us, I think both of you take the position that given some of the challenges that it has and the opportunities, that it's going to grow probably larger than it's going to continue to grow at a faster pace than commerce media overall after 2027, but it's not probably going to be like a primary channel for the big spending advertisers. Did I get that?
I think so.
I'm happy to take on that side of the debate for this
Okay.
exercise.
You don't 100%. That
Well,
I appreciate
I'll
that.
lead out with definitely
Max-
saying over the, let's call it near to medium term. I think that that's right. And a lot of it is due to stuff that we've mentioned or, hinted at already, right? I mean, there is a real kind of inventory scale problem that most of these players are butting up against already. And there's also, as Sarah's mentioned, this sort of, data heterogeneity issue, which is going to constrain some players but empower others. And then also there's just the simple limiting factor of the data is that some of these guys sit on is definitely unique and differentiated, but is it so much more unique and so much more differentiated that to get to that state that you described earlier means probably taking some money away from retail media or taking some money away from Google or taking some money away from Meta. And I don't think that that's really what I see down the path a little bit, but I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about it.
I will completely agree, and we've been given the task of ganging up on Rob here. So one of the things that you said really hits home for me, which is just that these players positioning themselves as commerce media networks sort of brings them into the same conversation, obviously, as retail media networks. And if you're courting the same advertisers, there are a set of expectations that these advertisers have around the performance of these investments that I think is going to be really difficult for the financial players as they stand today to meet, right? And that is going to create a considerable challenge, particularly when we're talking about a cohort of advertisers that are already reporting being fatigued and overwhelmed by the sheer number of choice that they have within this really crowded landscape and the difficulty and friction that can occur with scaling their spend across even more commerce media networks. So I think it's both sort of a strength positioning themselves that way because they do have access to really exciting transaction data that can be quite broad in nature. But it's also something that's going to set themselves up with a really uphill battle in terms of satisfying what advertisers have become accustomed to when they work with retailers.
So here's where I fall on it. If I were to think about like somebody that has a Chase credit card and they're using Chase as it's their primary card. So Chase is seeing what they're doing. They have quite a bit of information. I feel like as advertisers start to scale out more, as clean room environments start to grow and usage of clean room environments, I can see Chase being able to build lookalike models that are going to be superior to other predictive models because they have such specific information about spending habits and capabilities. So for one, I think that some of the financial institutions could actually be a marketplace for quite accurate lookalike models on DSPs potentially if they have scale. So I feel like that could address some scale issues, not necessarily on site, but certainly with off-site social capabilities, they can probably chase and with their reach, they might be able to with lookalike models compete in that way. The other thing is I think there's going to be innovations that are going to change how people shop. And we were sort of slacking on this the other day. I think that the credit cards are going to come out with the agents because it's going to be on site. They're going to be able to leverage sort of your behavior and really figure that out.
We do an entire other podcast, and hopefully we do have one in the works around the viability around true autonomous agentic shopping, right? Because I'm sure there's a ton of really strong opinions amongst folks at eMarketer on that. I'm a bit of a skeptic that this is going to take off in a truly autonomous way. I think it is very easy for something to go wrong in a way that erodes trust. And I think financial institutions are really married to maintaining the trust and credibility that they've built up, right? And we've seen what happens when that goes awry and how difficult it can be to sort of regain that. And so I think we'll need to see a lot of progress from the perspective of something more autonomous, like agentic-led shopping, for that to really take off. It's certainly a possibility down the line, but I don't personally see it taking off without a fair amount of oversight by the consumer in the near term.
Yeah, and I think that there's this, in a kind of structural way, a misalignment there where I feel like we've talked about Chase a disproportionate amount, but maybe it's just because I have one of their cards in my wallet. But they have already sort of sought to position themselves as like a shopping partner. Like they have a commerce toolbar that you can install in Chrome that will kind of tell you when things are on sale and stuff like that. That's an easy way for them to vacuum up affiliate marketers' budgets. But if they were to build one of these things and say, hey, Max, we've built this agent that will help buy things for you, the things that I'm going to want that agent to do are things that sort of fly against what the advertisers want. So maybe I'm looking at a pair of pants on some website and I go, I like these, but I don't really want to pay full price. I want you to buy these for me, but wait until there's a discount of at least, 25%. An advertiser doesn't want to
Yeah,
sort
but
of
I don't think that aligns to consumer behavior in that regard because I think consumers, they're more immediate.
Okay.
And I'm going to pull your points argument back now. So say you want 25% and that's you and you're going to wait for it. But if somebody is interested in that pants and says, "Hey, there's 10% and points towards the vacation I'm trying to save for." Right? Like it's a double thing. They save some money and then on their statements, Chase can show them how much money they've saved them.
I think you guys are hitting on like sort of the crux of the issue, right? Which is that it is a harder thing to do, but I think it's what advertisers want and what the financial institutions want is to be able to influence user behavior before they reach sort of the bottom of the funnel. But it takes a much more thoughtful sort of combination of offers and incentives, which can be quite hard to sort of thread the needle on, right? And I think that's what sort of remains to be seen is, when I look at the offers on some of these players, and it goes back to the true false question from earlier around whether or not these players can predict sort of my needs. I'm not seeing things that jump out at me, and I'm not picking on Chase specifically here. I'm sort of talking more broadly. I'm not seeing offers or promotions that are incentivizing me to take action I wasn't already taking, right? And I think that is going to be what these players need to move in the direction of in order to find success.
I think though what's interesting, and this is something that's, speculative, and I think I would probably bet against it as an outcome, but it is, I think, extant as a possibility, which is that, every generation shops differently on the internet and every generation banks differently. And, as Generation Alpha, I guess, is maybe the next cohort that's going to become card owners, there is no kind of like received wisdom or sort of tradition that a new generation of banking consumers adopts. They just, when they get a credit card, they open that app for the first time and they go, huh, what's this? And if over that time enough progress has been made that a Chase or a PayPal or even a Klarna, if you open up for the first time, like can really kind of effectively communicate that anytime you want, there's this bazaar of value and stuff that, over time will really speak to you, just waiting for you anytime you open this app up. I could see that very
Timo.
Exactly. I mean, I think so much about like I think that for now the banks are going to want to project a sort of premium aura, which would preclude them doing stuff like that. But I think that maybe a neobank could start a kind of like, young consumers oriented thing. And maybe they do partner with like a Temu or a Shein and say, look at all these cheap schmatas you can get for, no money at all, customer X.
It seems more likely that they would, like a bank, when you talk about premium, would more likely try to go after the affluent and mass affluent
Yes,
segment because they can access them and the advertisers will pay a premium for that.
100%.
And they also make a premium on the interchange because those folks get the high-end cards and the retailers pay more money when those cards get swiped.
Yep.
One thing I want to mention, and one thing that I do have some optimism around, and Max, you alluded to it earlier, is that PayPal have announced some really interesting initiatives to actually work directly with their merchant partners to secure ad inventory on retailer and merchant websites, helping advertisers target which retailers they're seeing their share potentially decline. And I think that sort of marriage of being able to secure really valuable inventory on websites where we know it works quite well is a really exciting opportunity. And I'm interested to see sort of how that develops from PayPal.
I have to say that we were very nice to each other, and I don't feel like we debated at all.
Well, I want to come back for the 75th anniversary episode.
Yeah, the 75th one.
I'm gonna have can we have like a big podcast with all of the
brawl,
all the guests? We'll try to do that. Thank you guys so much.
No, it was fun.
Yeah, had a good time. Thanks.
Yeah, really, thank you, and thank everyone for listening to the Banking and Payment Show. Also, thank you to our studio team that puts these episodes together. Our next episode is on September 16th, so be sure to check it out. Thank you. See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.